So let's start discussing about truss. What is a truss and what is the primary purpose of a truss? How we can, where we have used it, where we have seen it. So I have just made a small demonstration purpose truss. You can see this is what is called a truss. Most of you may have seen it. Most of you must have travelled by train, and while you have travelled by train, you must have seen it. That whenever you find a bridge, this kind of structure will appear. This is what is called a truss. Okay. So what is the primary purpose of a truss? The primary purpose of a truss is to carry load or support. It acts as a primary structural support. Is it okay? So what is the primary purpose of a truss? It acts as a support for maybe train or bridge or maybe roof. Is that okay? So let us understand the fundamentals of truss. So what is a truss? You can have a two-dimensional truss like the one I had just shown you, like this one, or you can have a three-dimensional truss. Have you seen a three-dimensional truss? You must have seen the high voltage power transmission support. They are technically three-dimensional truss. Okay, but I will limit myself in this lecture to two-dimensional truss, and let us begin with the mechanics or the fundamental of it. So what is the primary purpose? It is discussed. The primary purpose is to support. Is that okay? Now, what type of truss? So we are dealing with two-dimensional truss. Third point, are they static, are they stationary, or are they moving? So depending upon situations, majority of the truss are stationary, but you can have a situation where you can have a mobile truss. But in general, majority of the truss which you may have seen are stationary. Okay. Then the third important point, which I will try to demonstrate with the help of a triangle. Okay. What is the fundamental relation between all these three members? The fundamental relation between these three members are that they are not independent to move relative to each other. Are they independent to move relative to each other? You can make a triangle structure of your own, and you can observe that they are not capable of having any relative motion. So what does it mean? It means that a truss is a completely constrained structure. It is completely constrained structure. Is that okay? What is a truss? Primary, first thing, it supports, normally stationary. We are dealing with two-dimensional truss, and now the fundamental of a truss starts with a triangle. And in case of a triangle, you can see these three members. Is there any kind of relative motion between the members? No. So they are completely constrained structures. This is the fundamental which you have to understand. Then, why do we use it? What is the primary advantage? So the primary advantage, there are two primary advantages. I'll talk in perspective of engineering as well as finance. So there are two primary advantages. The first advantage of a truss is that it is economical, and the second advantage is it can sustain large amount of load. So technically it is a structure which is economical and it can sustain large amount of load, and therefore they are very much important and for an engineer to understand. Therefore they are highly used, and because they are highly used, it is important for us as an engineer to understand. So what is a truss? I have made a small truss made up of some papers, but this will be able to help you understand what technically is called a truss. Okay. So we have a pin joint, and you know that pin joint will produce two reactions, and a roller joint which will produce one reaction in the vertical direction. Okay. So this is something which you may have seen. Where have you seen this? Can you recollect? You must have seen while you are traveling by train. Normally we make bridges of this kind. Okay. So truss is something which is found everywhere. You can find it in your workshop. where the roof is supported by the truss. Okay. So before we proceed further, let us understand what we are going to study in truss. Okay. The primary thing means which we want to find out is the force in all the members of the truss. This is the primary thing which is of our concern within this syllabus domain. What we are going to study, we are interested in finding the force in all the members of the truss. To find the force in all the members of the truss under given loading condition, we have to convert the real truss into a model. And to convert a real thing into a model, we have to make certain assumptions. Is that okay? If we are making some real thing into a model, we have to make certain assumptions. Okay, let us discuss about the assumptions made in the analysis of truss. Why do we make an assumption? The assumptions are made to simplify the problem. The real life problem is really difficult to calculate. So we create a model. And if you create a model, then little bit of assumptions will make your process much simple. There will be a loss of answer. The answer will not be exactly correct. But yes, because of this assumption, the effort to get an approximate answer will reduce to a large extent. Therefore, these assumptions are made. So what are those assumptions? I have taken few of them in the case of analysis of truss. The first assumption is all joints are pin joints. In reality, what do you find? If you go and see a truss, what will you find? In reality, all the joints are riveted or they may be welded. Okay, but they are not pin joints. But what is our assumption? That all the joints are pin joint. Second point, all the members are weightless. So what does it say? We are assuming that all the members are not having any weight. In reality, it does have, but the weight of the member is too much, is less compared to the load it is going to sustain, and therefore the magnitude of its own weight is not producing a major effect, and therefore we can ignore it. Is that okay? So this is also very important. We assume all the member to be weightless, unless stated otherwise. If it is stated yes, the members are having certain weight, then divide it equally on both the joints on which it is connected. Is that okay? Next point. The third point is all load acts at joint. Let me demonstrate it with an example. So if I have a truss, the load will act over here, or here, or here, but it should not act here. No, this is not allowed. The load can act at this joint, or this joint, or this joint. This is what is the meaning of the word all load acts at joints. Okay, all load acts at joint. All members are two force member. This is also very important to be understood. All members are two force member. What does it mean? It literally means that the members are either in tension or they are in compression. What is the advantage? You reduce the number of unknowns. Now how many unknowns do you have in this truss? How many unknowns do you have in this truss? You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7 members. Okay? You have 7 members, and so only 7 unknowns does exist. You have the direction of the force as well. The direction of the force is along the member. The plus and minus sign will signify whether the member is in tension or compression. Okay? So the number of unknown reduces to number of members in the truss. The next point is members are connected at the ends. For this also, you should understand you don't have a member CE. In this truss, you don't have a member CE. You have a member CD and DE. This you should be very careful about it. You don't have a member CE. You have a member CD and DE. No member is continuous through a joint. Okay? And the last part is generally members are straight. Even if it is not straight, you assume it to be straight and solve the problem. Okay? So this is all about assumptions at this level. Okay? One of the questions which is commonly asked in this topic is types of truss. Technically what it is trying to ask is whether the truss is constrained or is over constrained or is under constrained. Constrained means if you take the simplest truss is a triangle. What do you observe in this case? These two members don't have a relative motion among themselves. So this is a completely constrained structure. Okay? So there are three types of truss which you have to understand. The first one is called perfect truss. The second one is deficient truss. And the third one is redundant truss. Let us try to understand it with a small example. Okay? So this is the case of a perfect truss, in which there is no relative motion between the members. The structure is completely constrained and the relative motion does not exist between members. And how will you find whether the truss is perfect or not, is completely constrained or not? Okay, so there is a simple formula which says m equals to 2j minus 3. What does m stand for? M stands for number of members in a truss. So let us take our case. Let us take this small case. Let us take this case. Okay. How many members are there in this case? 1, 2, 3. You can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7. Okay. So there are 7 members. M equals to 7. How many joints are there in this truss? A, B, C, D and E. 5 joints are there. So J equals to 5. Now let us try to put this value over here. You will find that LHS, that is number of member, is 7 and RHS will be 2 multiplied by 5 minus 3 is again 7. And because LHS equals to RHS, this equation is satisfied and this truss is therefore a perfect truss. And therefore it is completely constrained. It is not over constrained, it is not under constrained. Is that okay? So perfect truss, what does it technically mean? It means that the truss is perfectly constrained. The second type of truss is called deficient truss, and let me try to explain it with this example. Okay? So if I take a truss of this kind and if I apply a force here, what will happen? You can see there is a chance of relative motion between the members. If I leave it, there is a chance of relative motion in case of between the members. This doesn't happen over here. Even if I am holding one, there is no relative motion between this. But here, if you apply a force, deformation will happen. See, I am holding this one, deformation is happening. See, because of the application of load, the truss collapses. There is no means the members are not constrained. The structure is not rigid. Okay, so technically this kind of system becomes mechanism which you will study in theory of machine. So in case of a deficient truss, as in this case, let us look into this case. So in this case, what will happen? You have a truss of this kind. How many members are there? How many members do we have here? 4. Okay. So M equals to 4. And how many joints are there? How many joints are there? How many joints are there? 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. So if you use this equation, what is the value of LHS? LHS is 4. And what is the value of RHS? RHS is 2 into 4 minus 3, which will be equal to 5. So you can see M is less than 2j minus 3. And if this happens, the structure is not rigid. I repeat, the structure is not rigid. There is a possibility of relative motion between the members and thus structure is not completely constrained. Okay. Now let us look into the third case, and the third case is redundant truss. Okay, the third case is redundant truss. May I erase this part? So what happens in case of a redundant truss? Technically, it is over constrained. So let me demonstrate this with another example. See, this member, this is not connected. Okay, so even you can see a cross, but it is not connected, it's free. So now in this kind of truss, what is happening? The number of members are more than required. It is over constrained, over rigid. Is that okay? It is over rigid. Now if I have a situation of this kind, let us see what is the number of members. How many members are here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 members. And how many joints are there? 1, 2, 3, 4. This is not a joint. See, this is not a joint. So 4 joints are there. If you calculate the LHS, LHS is 6. And what is RHS? RHS is 2 multiplied by 4 minus 3, and this will be equal to 5. You can very easily see that M is more than 6 is more than 5, 2j minus 3. So these type of structures where it is over constrained, over rigid, over means more number of members than required, they are called redundant truss. Let us try to understand the sign convention in case of a truss. This is very important because all the members, as per the assumption in our truss, are two force members. So they may be experiencing either tension or compression. So how to decide how to put the arrow and what should be the direction of the arrow? To understand the direction of the arrow, I will suggest you that you should always go for tension. If all the members are in tension and your answer is positive, then what you have assumed is correct, and if your answer is negative, then the member is in compression. So my suggestion is always assume the unknown force to produce a tension in the bar. With this assumption, I will draw the arrow, and how you can understand it, this is what I am trying to show. So I have taken a very simple truss and I am showing you the sign convention. Okay. So to understand it, just section all the members, remove little portion of all the members. Please understand this. This is very important to be understood. Otherwise, the sign convention concept is not easily assimilated. Okay. What I have done, I have removed. One more is remaining. So technically, what I have done, I have taken section of all the joints. Okay. So now let us assume that the member is in tension. The member is in tension. Okay. So I am assuming that all the members are in tension. One, two, three, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah. So I am assuming that all the members are in tension. Now, as per Newton's third law, if this member is experiencing a pull in this direction, then obviously there will be a force in this direction. So please try to understand this figure. This is very important. So whenever you draw a joint, okay, let me draw the free body at least. I am removing this part also and this part also. So if you draw the free body, okay. So this is the force system. You see, this is joint A or the first joint. If I am assuming that the arrows are moving away from the joint, then what I am assuming? That the member is in tension. This is very important to be understood. So if you draw the FBD of joint, for example, I call this as A, and if I move away from it, if the forces in the members are moving away from the joint, then it is called, then we are assuming that the member is in tension. Similarly, if I draw the FBD of joint B, I call this point as B. Okay, so this is the force. You see, if I am assuming an arrow of this kind, if this is the direction of force acting on the pin, then what I have assumed, that my member is in tension. The member is in tension. Similarly, I can go for C. And for D, what will be the direction? D, what will be the direction? See? And similarly for E, let us call this E and D. So please try to understand this sign convention, okay? What I have done, I have assumed that all the members are in tension. What I have done, I have assumed that all the members are in tension. And if member is in tension, then the pin, okay, it will produce a pull. Every action has equal and opposite reaction, okay? So if you apply a force in this direction, the pin will experience a force in the opposite direction. So while you are drawing the FBD of the pin, you have to draw the arrow away from the pin along the member. Away from the pin along the member. Away from the pin along the member. I repeat this once again. Whenever you are drawing the arrow, you draw the arrow in such a way that it moves along the member and away from the pin. If you do so, then the assumption that the member is in tension is accepted. Is that okay? Don't follow any other sign convention. There can be many other sign convention that it will put you into confusion. Just follow one. Okay? And in my sign convention, in this sign convention, what I am assuming, that all the members are in tension, and how will you, whenever you are solving it by joint method, how will you put the arrow? You will put the arrow in such a way that it should move away from the joint, away from the pin, along the member. There is one more thing which you have to understand. If this member is in a force of tension, I call it F1, so this force will also be F1 and this force will also be F1. Okay? There will be no change in sign. Okay? Even though it is opposite and all that, no. There is one force, F1. So all these forces are F1, F1. Okay? If I call this force as F2, so this is F2, this is F2,